Welcome, everybody. Wow. I knew we'd have a full house, but wow. Welcome. I'm Doug Kinney. I know probably half of you. Welcome back. To those who haven't been here before, welcome. As usual, I'm the MC for this event, but as usual, I'm going to try to hand off a lot of those duties to other people because that's how I do things. I'm going to hand it off now to a few colleagues who want to say a few words, but before I do that, let me go through some logistics because logistics are going to be a challenge with this many people. So let me go through a few things. We're going to be full. We are full. We're going to be full all day long, I think. Tomorrow should be a little better. We have 2 overflow rooms, classrooms where the video and audio is piped in. Those are upstairs on the 2nd floor, 204 and 205. They're basically right above us here. Those are nice if you want to spread out or if you want to have food. You're not supposed to have food in here, but I'm not going to play cop. So, but up there you don't have to hide it, and I don't have to look the other way. So if you want to do that, that's a good spot. And you're going to want to know where those rooms are anyway, because when we have lunch in the cafeteria, which is directly above us on the 2nd floor, that room won't hold more than half of you. And so we're going to have to kind of spill over into those other rooms or go outside if it's still a nice day for that. So a few challenges today just based on the number of people. I think we should be able to figure it out. The bathrooms are at the end of the long hallway out here. They're the same spot on every floor, so you can pop up and down a floor if you need to. I think it's a safe assumption to say that a lot of you are going to have problems with parking, because this is a university, that's what we do, parking issues. And Annie's out front trying to take care of it. I know she was sending emails out at like 9 o'clock last night about parking, so she's on it. But but if you have more questions, talk to her out there. There's a lot of media here. There's a lot of photographers here. So I'll just give the advice I always give when there's media here is try not to say stupid things and try to look presentable. And yes, I violate both of those things every year, and perhaps I've done so already, but that's the way it works. We have another 100 or so people watching today on Zoom, which, if there's any problem with the Zoom feed, use the chat feature, and we'll find out what's going on, and we'll try to fix that for you. But welcome to those on Zoom as well. I hope you all picked up a copy of the program for many reasons. One of which is I'm not going to do detailed introductions of our speakers, in part because they're pretty well-known folks, so you probably know most of them. Part, we're just trying to save some time, and part, I'm just trying to make life as easy on myself as possible. So, but there's bios in the program, so look at the program. Also note on page 4 of the program, there's the information about how to get on the Wi-Fi here, which you're going to want to do, because there's also information about how to use Slido, and Slido is how we're doing our questions and answers, our audience questions. Anywhere in the program that says facilitated discussion, that's audience questions, is what that is. And we use this program, Slido, and you can use a computer, you can use your phone, either way, but you can type in questions, and they're compiled, and you can upvote other people's questions and so on, and so they're all, and you can do it anonymously and so on. And the folks on Zoom can use the same system, so we find it works pretty well. But you're gonna need the code that's on, I think it's page 4 of the program. So look at that. Okay, what else do I need to tell you, folks? I think that's about it. All right, I'm going to hand this off to Chris Winter, the executive director of the Getch's Wilkinson Center, and he's going to give you a proper welcome. Chris.
Good morning, and thank you everybody for being here. And I'd just like to start by inviting you to thank Doug and Annie also for all their hard work. So please give them a round of applause. Doug and Annie Carlozzi, who's our assistant director. I don't know if Annie's in the room at the moment, but anyway, they have poured their heart and soul into this event for many months. And so really appreciate, Doug, all your hard work, and Annie. So thank them if you get a chance. And it's wonderful to see you all this morning. I'm also lucky to be able to thank our sponsors for the event, our presenting sponsors, the Walton Family Foundation, Conscious Bay Company, and the Bureau of Reclamation. So nice to have the folks from the Bureau with us as well. And our supporting sponsors with the Native American Rights Fund, the Colorado Foundation for a Better Earth, Somax Simmons and Dunn, and Hydros Consulting. Thank you so much for supporting us and the opportunity for everybody to get together. And we're also very grateful for our additional sponsors you'll find in the program. So please join me in giving them a big round of applause as well. I'm also really happy to acknowledge Walton Family Foundation for an additional reason, because while they're supporting this event, which is great, they're also offering a generous matching opportunity to the Getchis Wilkinson Center in support of our innovative water law fellows program. And so we're in the middle of a campaign to raise money for that program as well. Our Water Law Fellows program supports emerging leaders in the field of water law, which is so important right now at this time. And so Franny Monasterio, who brought us to attention so well in the back, and Andrew Teagarden, I think, is maybe out front. They're our current Water Law Fellows. So please get a chance, if you have some time, to introduce yourself. And if you have any questions about our program, please feel free to reach out to me at any point over the next couple of days, and we'll send out some information after the event about how you can support that program. So thank you for that. Okay, so you can tell we're really excited to host everybody today. This is an extremely timely and important conversation on the future of the Colorado River. We're so grateful for all of our speakers for attending. As Doug said, it's a packed room, so thank you for being kind to your neighbors and accommodating everybody. I think we had over 375 people registered to attend in person, probably another 100 online. So we have obviously a lot of interest. People care deeply about the future of the river and are really interested in coming together for a conversation and community. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And it's a critical time as we look not only to the post-2026 guidelines that are in development right now, of course, beyond that, and think about the health of the river as a whole. And so as we gather, I'd also just like to take a moment to honor and acknowledge that the University of Colorado Law School and the entire University of Colorado campus are on the ancestral and traditional homelands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute peoples. And further, we acknowledge the 48 contemporary tribal nations historically tied to the lands that are now called the state of Colorado. Okay, and so now it's my pleasure to be able to introduce Daryl V. Hill on behalf of the Water and Tribes Initiative. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the Water and Tribes Initiative for their partnership. They've been incredible partners for the last 2 years. We're so grateful for all their hard work and everything they're doing in the Basin. And Daryl, it's a total pleasure to be able to work with you and to introduce you to the crowd, so thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Very, very grateful to be here today, and very grateful that we have this facility and these incredible partners that we've had the last couple of years in doing this joint conference or co-convening or whatever you want to call. We did it together. And thank you, Chris, again, for being such an incredible host. And of course, to my partners in creating this event, Dr. Matt McKinney and Doug and Annie, of course, and know that there was a lot of effort and work that went into putting this together. And probably, you folks that are on the panel maybe have gotten tired of, oh, Daryl's calling again. Because we get pretty persistent in terms of, wanting to make sure that we're responsible and doing everything we can to get the voices that, need to be heard, in this room. And so, again, thanks to Chris and the university, and specifically to Matt, Doug, and Annie. So I just want to give them a hand. They're such... Those of you who have put on conferences know that it's quite an undertaking. And to get the kind of response that we've gotten in terms of your participation is pretty incredible. And I can't help but think about, the Getchus Wilkinson and, David Getchus and Charles Wilkinson and the things I've read and the things I've learned from them in terms of, kind of the foundation of the start of the conversations and the ongoing kind of reverberations of their thought and their teachings, have been really, really, powerful for me in terms of what I do. So very grateful for those two individuals. And last year when we were here, one of them passed, and it was just, when there's a legacy of an individual who creates a legacy, it's always a sad thing. And I've gotten to know a whole lot of legacy type people in this room, and I'm very honored. And I just want to say that, again, about, honoring and trusting not only the university, but Water and Tribes Initiative, to be here, because we really try to be as responsible as we can in terms of really working on our twofold agenda about, how do we help build capacity just in general, but mostly focus on tribes. And the second part of that is, building on the collaborative problem solving processes in the basin, which is basically the human relations. And, I probably know each one of you individually in here, including, the people who write about this and who tell the stories about what happened here too, my media friends. And so very, very grateful for all these partnerships because, for us, it's an indication of, the trust that has been built among, you all as human beings and in terms of your relationships to those, the broader conversation of, and I love the 10 Tribes Partnerships vision statement about, leading from a spiritual mandate to make sure that the river is protected. And, almost all of you that I know here, that I've spoken to, that I've had conversations to, is really grounded in that. And, and what an opportunity the next 2 days to really talk about those values and how those values actually translate into something in terms of policy and implementation and inclusion. And so thanks again to all of you for being here, and those of you that are on virtually as well. We really appreciate it. And I think Chris and Doug were telling me like the incredible numbers of people that are participating in these conversations. So it just shows you, the importance of this, not only to us here, but probably to our broader community. So thank you so much, and hand it back over to Doug.
Thanks, Daryl. All right, so almost the entire first day of our event is going to be hearing from the sovereign governments that have a role, rights and responsibilities regarding the river. And the fact that that takes pretty much the entire first day, I think says a lot about how complex this river is. So we're going to start that by talking about the federal perspective. And to get that started, I'm actually going to hand it over to Sarah Krakoff, who many of you know. Sarah's one of the few people, I think, who's been at the University of Colorado as long as I have. But she hasn't been here the last couple of years because she's been in DC as the Deputy Solicitor for Parks and Wildlife. And her title at the moment has expanded. I wrote this down, Sarah, because I think it just makes me giggle. She's the Deputy Solicitor for Parks and Wildlife with the delegated authority of the Assistant Secretary of Water and Science. And we did not make you a name tag. I was curious to see how we'd put that on your name tag. We didn't try, apparently. But Sarah would like to introduce the commissioner. So Sarah?
Thank you, Doug, and thank you, Doug and Chris and the GWC team for allowing me to do a short walk on. I couldn't resist saying hi to everybody, all my former students who are in the room, and taking the opportunity to introduce the Commissioner of the Bureau of Reclamation. I'm just going to say a couple short words before I introduce you to our amazing Commissioner about the connections between this law school and the Department of the Interior, which I've long appreciated, but do even more so now that I'm working in the department with my several hats at the moment. And I want to go back a little bit, but it'll be a whirlwind tour, I promise. This conference on and off has been called the Martz Conference, and Clyde Martz was the author of the very first natural resources law casebook. He had many positions in the federal government, including in the Department of Justice, but most importantly, he was solicitor at the Department of the Interior under President Carter, argued one of the seminal Supreme Court public lands cases. But it's from Clyde, who we lost a few years ago, that then the legacy of the school was set. The law school hired David Getches and Charles Wilkinson, who are the namesakes of this center. We have since lost both of them, and including, of course, the last time I was on this law school campus was for Charles's service last fall. David really had the vision, along with several key other people, to start these annual water law conferences. I know many of you know that, and they've been a mainstay for the folks working on the Colorado River ever since. And Doug, of course, has been crucial to organizing them every year. And the role that they played in nurturing your relationships and furthering the important conversations on the river are well known. And there's a reason there's so many people here today. And we're at this pivotal moment. I'm not going to say more about that because that's what everyone else is going to talk about all day today. But I'll just tell you that now sitting on this side, the government side of things, I am so impressed with everybody who works so hard to come to these consensus agreements with all the conflicts that exist and the incredibly thorny legal framework that I hope my students are all now at least somewhat well aware of. And I want to say one more thing about the legacy tied between the law school and the Department of the Interior. When Charles and David started working on these issues, they made it sort of common sense to all of us that the role of tribal nations was completely integral to the role of good and sustainable natural resources management in the West and throughout the country. And so that's just a little bit about the past. It's a weighty past that I certainly tried to live up to in both of my roles, former professor and now federal bureaucrat in various guises. And it's one, now I'm going to pivot to the present and then the future, that I can tell you this administration takes seriously in all its respects, right? Managing this river for the present and the future for all its constituents, upper and lower basin, all 7 states, all the tribal nations. And it's not always easy, but nothing that results in long-term results that are sustainable for everybody is easy. And I'll tell you that no one is more up for tackling hard challenges than the 24th Commissioner of the Bureau of Reclamation, Camille Calimlim Touton. It has been an honor and a pleasure to work with her. Her biography is in the materials, as Doug said, so I'm not going to go over it. I'm just going to tell you she is the hardest working person among many hardworking people in the department. She leads an amazing team of career employees, several of whom you know extremely well and you're going to hear from today, and I'm continually impressed by them. And it's up to this team here and all of us working together today to take us from that past, which gives us every reason to work toward the long-term sustainable future at this very, very crucial and pivotal time. So thank you all so much. Thank you for giving me these few minutes. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the 24th Commissioner of the Bureau of Reclamation, Camille Calimlim Touton. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Camille Calimlim Touton, and I am proud to serve as the Commissioner of the Bureau of Reclamation. thank you to the invitation to be here with you today. It is certainly an honor to join you all again at one of the leading forums on a discussion of the Colorado River, to be back in the basin, and to be back in the land where life is written in water. I want to begin by thanking our Colorado River Basin partners. We work tirelessly alongside you. Our work speaks for itself, and be assured that the Biden-Harris administration is bringing every tool and every resource to bear to develop strategies that achieve long-term water resilience. I also want to thank my team at the Bureau of Reclamation, the public servants in the room here today, and the many of our colleagues who live in the basin that they serve. Leading this Bureau is a privilege of a lifetime that I do not take for granted. Reclamation's success is rooted in our people, our partnerships, and our investments, and this past year has shown the success of our all-of-government approach in the Colorado River Basin and in every basin we work in across the American West. But let's start here in our home basin. With the historic conservation commitments of 3 million acre-feet, in the May 6th signing of the 2007 Interim Guidelines SEIS Record of Decision by Secretary Holland, we've staved off the near-term threat and stabilized a system to protect water deliveries, the ecosystem, and power production. We are 1.7 million acre-feet of that 3 million acre-feet goal. I'm also excited about our new agreement with Mexico, Minute 330, that went into effect in April of this year. In this new agreement under the 1944 treaty, Mexico will conserve 400,000 acre-feet, about 5 feet of water surface elevation in Lake Mead, over a 30-month period between now and the end of 2026. Mexico continues to be a true partner with us on the Colorado River, taking prompt action to help protect the system and reduce the likelihood of crisis conditions in the future, and as we focus on the long-term sustainable operations on the Colorado River. We look forward to our continued partnership with Mexico under President-elect Claudia Sheinbaum's leadership. I'd also like to thank my fellow La Comisionadas, Commissioner Hiner with IBWC and Commissioner Resendez with SILA for their leadership and support, and Deputy Commissioner Palumbo for leading these efforts on behalf of the Bureau of Reclamation. Our work to stabilize the system now has allowed us to now talk about the future. For 2027 and beyond, we initiated a collaborative, transparent, and inclusive process to develop the next iteration of guidelines and strategies to guide the next period of river operations into the future. And we are in the process of developing and evaluating a wide range of alternatives. This also includes evaluating the alternatives, the elements of alternatives, and concepts received from basin states, tribes, non-governmental organizations, and other stakeholders. Our post-26 manager, Carly Jurla, bookends me later today and can provide more details. Our goal is to develop an innovative and flexible operating guidelines that provide improved predictability of water availability and enhance opportunities for conservation, responsive to a broad range of plausible hydrology. Reclamation is committed to working with all parties to achieve as much consensus as possible. It is incumbent upon all of us to protect the infrastructure, the system, and the environment on which 40 million people rely. To succeed, any action that we move forward is one that we need to work through together. Our success includes engaging with all partners at the table. We have further strengthened our partnerships in post-26 by establishing the first federal tribe states group to ensure that all have a seat at the table, considering the critical decisions regarding long-term operations of the river, and that the decisions are responsive to the tribe's present and future needs. Our reclamation team has participated in over 30 government-to-government consultations since 2022, a majority of these in person, hosted by the sovereign tribal nations. I have visited half of the 30 Colorado River tribe basins in my tenure, and I look forward to visiting all the tribes that will have us. These visits were extremely informative in both understanding the river from a tribal vantage point and gave us a firsthand look at the infrastructure. There is something incredibly special about seeing the river from Antelope Canyon in Navajo Nation, touring the farming operations of Fort Mojave with Avikoma in the distance, witnessing history with the Colorado River Indian Tribal Chair Flores, Governor Hobbs, and Secretary Holland on the banks of the Colorado River. The backdrop of the La Plata Mountains as we walk the Pine River Irrigation Project. To be able to be in the wetlands along the Colorado River with the Quitson tribe, and to watch as the first solar panel canal in the Western Hemisphere is installed along the Casa Blanca Canal on the Gila River Indian Community Reservation. It's a $5.6 million investment with the Inflation Reduction Act. These visits also remind us of how much work remains. And it also reaffirms our commitment to working with all of you. How Reclamation engages with tribes across the West, and especially in this basin, is one of my proudest professional achievements. And our investments in Indian country match our commitment. Across the Bureau of Reclamation, we have a funding opportunity for $16.5 million to address the impacts of drought to tribal nations funded by the Inflation Reduction Act, and with our technical assistance funding. Selections are expected this fiscal year. This is one I'm really excited about. We have an MOU with the Indian Health Service to further develop the safe drinking water and community sanitation infrastructure projects across Indian country. It's a partnership with us using our technical engineering expertise coupling with IHA resources. And through these MOUs, we'll be able to collaborate and complete studies, plan and design construction of domestic infrastructure projects. And thank you to the Yakima Nation in Washington State for being our first partner. And finally, we launched another Inflation Reduction Act funding opportunity of $320 million for tribal domestic water supply projects in support of tribal household communities that currently do not have access to reliable drinking water supplies. Let me talk about this for just a moment. This is one of the things that we heard within our conversations with tribal nations. There are differing needs, technical capability, feasibility studies, construction. There's a barrier when it comes to cost share for these projects. So this is the first time that the Bureau of Reclamation in our history can work in this framework to be responsive to all of those needs and also almost eliminate that barrier of cost share. And so our funding opportunity is receiving proposals through August 4th of 2024, and this is a game changer for us in our relationship with sovereign nations. But it's across the West that our work is underpinned by these historic investments as part of President Biden's Investing in America agenda. In May alone, the Bureau of Reclamation announced $1 billion in projects across the American West. Since the bipartisan infrastructure law was signed in November of 21, we've announced more than $4.1 billion for 537 projects in all the states in which we operate. And since the Inflation Reduction Act was signed in 2022, Reclamation has announced $1.3 billion for 226 agreements and projects. We've continued to deploy those resources in this basin too, investing $2.7 million for 332 projects across the Colorado River Basin. And we're getting those money out. But let me talk to you about what this means in the Colorado River, because these are some of my favorite projects. Last week, I was in Southern California, hosted by our friends at the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, to announce our $179 million investment in large-scale water recycling. There were 4 projects, 3 in California and 1 in Utah. The project that Met has will look to be able to serve 500,000 homes. And it's a partnership with the Southern Nevada Water Authority and the Central Arizona Project. Last week, we announced $242 million in storage projects. That includes $75 million for BF-Sisk Dam in the South of Delta in California. What does that mean to the Colorado River? The BF-Sisk Dam is operated jointly with the Department of Water Resources in California. Their contractors are the state water contractors, which includes the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. Just south of here, we announced $90 million for the Arkansas Valley Conduit. This is one of my favorite projects. Dedicated by Kennedy, and we broke ground on phase 1 last year. We're looking to complete that soon. We broke ground on phase 2 last winter. There were people who didn't believe this could happen. And it's amazing to see that we're burying our success 1 mile at a time with the pipe that we put in those communities. We also looked at small storage and water recycling. $35 million announcement. We talked about Washington County already as a recipient of large-scale water recycling. A month ago, I was with Washington County in Utah to announce this $7 million of funding for their Tokerville Reservoir, which has a 2,100 acre-foot capacity. Where we were standing a month ago will be underwater in 3 years, also utilizing the large-scale water recycling funding that we were able to partner with them with. The Aquatic Ecosystem Program is another new program for us. And in December, we announced $20 million as part of that to our partners at the Southern Nevada Water Authority to help with the infrastructure in the Las Vegas Wash. And many people who know that plumbing system knows that's a critical pathway to be able to return water to Lake Mead in Nevada. And tomorrow I will be in the Eel River in Sonoma County to also celebrate another project for ecosystem. I told you Arkansas Valley Conduit's my favorite. Maybe all of these are, but the Salton Sea is also my favorite. And in December, we announced a $70 million part of that program, and I look forward to working with the state of California, IID, and Coachella, and making sure that we obligate the remaining $250 million. That was the first announcement made under the Inflation Reduction Act. Certainly in the Department of the Interior, as it was enacted, perhaps across the federal government. We also do work in other basins. I know it's really hard to believe. And we announced $60 million for the Rio Grande Basin. These are through cooperative agreements that we work through with stakeholders that will benefit the Rio Grande project and endangered species in the basin. The water savings for the proposed projects are anticipated to be in the tens of thousands of acre feet. And in an unprecedented effort in the California Central Valley, we signed a South of Delta drought plan with partners in the San Joaquin Valley, enabling contractors to store a portion of their wet water supplies for use for critical dry years. It also saves permanent crops from being fallowed, keeps San Joaquin River water in the river in the worst of drought years, and these actions are in our support of a successful implementation of the San Joaquin Restoration Program. But I'm really excited to announce today that $700 million of the drought funding under the Inflation Reduction Act for Bucket 2. In support of this announcement, Reclamation is currently negotiating proposals in Bucket 2 for the Lower Colorado River Conservation and Efficiency Program. Bucket 2 is the long-term portion of the program. A priority of Reclamation's funding from the Inflation Reduction Act will be spent here. In the lower basin, we are making this initial investment of $700 million in projects with a combined potential of saving 700,000 acre feet in Lake Mead. Submittals came from all 3 states, all sectors, tribal, states, and individual water entitlement holders. And we look forward to our continued engagement with the project proponents as we collaborate on the details of these agreements and get ready to celebrate each of these when the agreements are final. We expect the agreements to be announced on a rolling basis over the next coming months. And just as Bucket 1 system conservation agreements supported our work to stabilize the system through 2026, Bucket 2 efficiency projects will aid in the long-term resiliency of the basin in support of post-2026 operations. In the Upper Basin, we have IRA funding that we're eager to use toward long-term investments on water conservation and ecosystem restoration projects. Colorado's poet laureate Hornsby Farrell, Thomas Hornsby Farrell's words still ring true today. For Colorado, but I would say for the basin as well. Here is a land where life is written in water. The West is where water was and is. And I add, the West is where the water will be. Our work over the last 3 years has been transformative to our work towards the future. And we are committed to you and the foundation of collaboration and cooperation in the basin that we look to continue. To build a river that future generations would be proud to inherit. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here with you today. I'm so happy to have this dialogue with you, to see so many friends. I'd like to say I look forward to answering your questions, but I'm here to answer your questions.
I like how you framed that. All right, we are going to do questions. Before I say anything about questions, there are some people that are still looking for seats, so let's try to accommodate them. There's at least 2 here, 3, a third there. There's 4 or 5 over here. There's 1 over here. By all means, this is a good time to fill this place in. Okay. All right, questions. This is where we use the Slido technology. I wasn't a big fan of this, I gotta admit, this Slido thing. Last year, Matt McKinney forced me to do it. So it was his line in the sand. He says, we're gonna do this. And we used it, and people seem to really like it. So we're doing it again. So it's, again, the link is on the page 4 of the program. You go there, you don't have to download a program or anything. It's just a web thing. You type in a question. It goes over here. Celine, I think, is the gatekeeper. You know, so she'll fix your punctuation and things like that. And then she'll ask the question. And again, you can upvote or downvote. I don't know if you can downvote. You can upvote a question. So we'll do it that way. And it will be relatively painless.
Great.
Yeah, okay. Celine, do we have some questions?
We do, but I would encourage people to start putting more into Slido. So Commissioner Touton, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning.
For your remarks. And I want to start by asking you, and this is really thinking about this year and next year, what does success look like? And what do you need from those of us in the room and on Zoom today to make that happen?
Success is continuing the tradition of this basin. You know, I just want to, before I talk about the future, we need to take a pause and talk about where we've come. When we first met in 2021, it was a very different river. It was a very different river for multiple reasons. In the last 3 years, we've been able to really think about how we operate this system in real time, but also really progressive ways in which we've been able to implement stabilizing the system that will carry on to the future. Genevieve Johnson is in the room here today, and she was our lead for SEIS. That was a process that we started in October of 2022. We had a draft in April of 23. We had the agreement with the lower basin states in May of 23, and then I saw you the week after. And so success to me is continuing the dialogue at the table, ensuring that the people stay at the table, and that we recognize that it's all of us being there to come up with a solution.
Thank you. And thanks for sending the questions in. I'm seeing quite a few on the same theme. So could you talk a little bit about when we can expect the Bucket 2 funding to be available to the Upper Basin?
I look forward to working with the Upper Basin on Bucket 2 funding.
All right, I am looking to...
But let's get excited about Bucket 2 in the Lower Basin, $700 million.
Give me just a second here. So we have a couple of questions about the scope of the interim guidelines process. So could you talk a little bit about why the scope of the process is limited to Powell and Meade? And can you also talk about what you expect to be handled in parallel processes?
Thanks for that. And when we look at the process we're in, as I mentioned, we're in the alternative development stage. You're mentioning what we had as far as our scope in the Federal Register. And honestly, this is some of those details I'd toss over to Carly Jurla when she's on the panel later today. But it also means when you're looking at the system, inherently what we're looking at is a NEPA process. And so it's important to be able to look at scope, to be able to then analyze impact and have alternatives that can be implementable. So I can just defer that and to my colleague who bookends me later today. But you asked about parallel processes. I'm calling them concurrent. One that we're looking at is working with the sovereign tribal nations. I don't want to say it's one thing, because what I've learned in working with the tribes is if you know one tribe, that you know one tribe. And so working through some of those issues that have larger themes about their water rights, their infrastructure. We are also working on other projects, including, as I mentioned, the Salton Sea, ensuring that the conservations that we committed to in the lower basin we live up to, and having a dialogue with Mexico about the future.
Thank you. So this will take us in another direction, but it's popular on Slido. How is the Bureau of Reclamation preparing for the likely changes to Chevron deference?
Well, I will start that I am an engineer. But it's hard to speculate on what has or hasn't happened yet. And so I look forward to having that discussion when we know what it is that is going to happen.
All right.
I love anonymous questions.
Can you comment on how the negotiations, are proceeding between the upper and lower basin states, and will you meet with officials while you're here in Boulder?
Good morning, Commissioner Mitchell. I will tell you that the 7 governors' reps care so deeply about these issues, care so deeply about what it means for their states, but also carry the heavy burden of what it means for the American West. And so I know that These conversations are hard, but I know that we're having them together, that they're talking to each other. There probably isn't a day where I don't talk to a gov rep, a tribal leader, other of our partners on these issues. And so, yeah, this is a place where we'll all see each other. But I guess what I'm saying is I have full faith in my partners in the Basin states and with our tribes, and we're going to get it done.
Thank you. So there's a question here about how Interior is coordinating efforts to address climate change with efforts to address Colorado River supply challenges. Can you share anything with us on that?
Sure. I mean, the Colorado River and certainly the Bureau of Reclamation is at the front of aridification and climate change. When your product is water, when your systems were built a century ago with the premise that your largest reservoir isn't Hoover Dam in Lake Mead or Lake Powell, our largest reservoir is snowpack, and we're seeing that diminishing, melting sooner, or perhaps not even making it in reservoirs at all. We've been talking about this as we look at operating in the future. But part of this too is a commitment to the best available science and engineering and being transparent about the information when we have it. And so we have these groups that we work through within the Department of the Interior. Several of our sister bureaus are here. We're coordinating within the department. There's not a week where we're not coordinating with the White House, who cares deeply about this basin, who knows intricately what the elevations are in Lake Mead. And so when you talk about how are we coordinating, it's not just at the Department of the Interior. This is truly a whole of government approach for the Biden-Harris administration.
Thank you. And there was a question in here about asking if you could expand a little bit on how you were able to remove the tribal cost share barrier.
Sure. So when you, honestly, it was an effort across the board, right? When we work on these programs, and just for context, when we received the $8.3 billion in bill, it was across 12 different programs. 5 of them were new. Within the Inflation Reduction Act, we essentially stood up all of those projects for that $4.5 billion. There's some that you already know, like rural water, like Title 16, but large-scale water recycling, ecosystem, small storage, those are new. Bucket 1 and Bucket 2, those are new programs. And so as you develop those programs, you have to be able to explain, not just to the Bureau, not just to the department, but to our partners in the White House and Congress, what would make it the most effective. And what we heard, one of our premier programs that we're proud of is WaterSmart. It has allowed us to save so much water across the West through efficiencies, through technology, but it has a statutory cost share requirement. And that is a barrier to many communities, not just to tribal communities, but to some of the irrigation districts that we work with who don't have the ability to put up the 50-50 cost share. And so we had the ability within the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act to think about things differently because we had the space within the law. And so working with the department, working with Congress, and certainly all of you helping us to tell the story on why it matters that these changes need to happen is exactly how we got it done. And it's, again, reclamation doesn't work in a vacuum. Whether it's every single decision, it's continuous partnership across the board.
Thank you. And I'm going to combine a couple of questions that I think are related since we are running short on time. So there's a question about why Reclamation supports closed-door negotiation policies on an issue that directly affects all people living in the basin. And there's another question about formalizing tribal nation participation in governance processes. And so maybe I'll combine those to ask you, it's hard to make policy like this with 40 million people, and yet there is some angst in those questions about who gets to be at that table. Do you have any comments about that?
We are going through the process of developing operations in a public way through the post-2026 process. We've engaged with all of you. Certainly, there are principles that we work with for states, for tribes, for NGOs, but it's not lost on us that this has to be a transparent process. You know, we received thousands of letters for our scoping report. We did a pre-scoping report beforehand. We also, as we have information, release it in the public sphere. This level of transparency for us is to provide the context so that you can see how decisions are made. And perhaps a game changer that we've done to be able to level the playing field is our web tool that you all have used. We have dozens of scenarios that people have run there of how operations can look in the future. And so as we walk through this, we are very cognizant that it is not just impacting 7 states or 30 sovereign nations, that it's impacting it's the American West, but it really is impacts to the nation. Regarding tribal engagement, that is one that I'm happy to continue the dialogue on. I think we've made significant progress. I'm proud of that, but that is one that I look forward to getting more feedback. There's many leaders in the room here today to continue that conversation.
Thanks. So let's turn to money. How is the Bureau prepping Congress for the long-term funding needs to implement this suite of solutions needed to address issues facing the basin?
My focus first is our FY25 budget, which many of you saw, and then to be able to deploy the resources that we've been given with the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and 8 and the Inflation Reduction Act. When I walked into the door of the Biden-Harris administration, the Bureau of Reclamation was a $1.5 billion agency. Last fiscal year, we had $2 billion of obligations with the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act on top of our discretionary budget. On top. The way that you get Congress's buy-off is to show them that you are good stewards of that funding so that they look to invest in this. So as much as it is on me, it's on all of us to show that the investments that the American public has made for this basin matters and works. So I look forward to your help in ensuring that we are successful in the deployment of this generational resources that we have.
All right, I think we have time for one more. So can you speak to the current investigation and preliminary alternatives for the structural modifications at Glen Canyon Dam?
When you're looking at Glen Canyon Dam, our deliveries in the near term are sound. There will be no disruption to our operations. What we saw as we were doing an analysis on our facilities, as we do with all of our facilities, was evidence of cavitation. We recognize that in the near term that this is unlikely to be a challenge. But in our efforts to be transparent about what could impact operations into the future, we are working on, we made that information available. But we're also looking already at the engineering behind this. We have an amazing team at the Technical Service Center in Lakewood, not too far from here. I know some of you came to see it. We actually have a scaled model of Glen Canyon Dam. Thanks, Director Docksetter. She came out to go see the model yesterday. But it is something top of mind for us. It is something that we are very forward about talking with all of you, and stay tuned as we get more information. And many of you are engaged already, so perhaps as just continuing the conversation.
Well, thank you so much. And let's do another round of applause for the committee.
Daryl?
Just real quickly, I forgot to do this earlier, and the one thing I forgot to do is introduce the rest of my team as well in terms of the people facilitating the questions today. And most of you know Celine Hawkins with the Nature Conservancy and has been an incredible partner with us and on our leadership team. Nina Gruber, that you probably all know, I'm seeing emails from in terms of, and she works with the Lincoln Institute Babbitt Center for Learning, who's our fiscal agent, and of course, Professor Jason Robeson from the University of Wyoming, again, who's on our leadership team. And I'm so grateful, that they're here to help facilitate this process. And as Doug mentioned before, he was really resistant to the Slido, but I think it works really well. So thank you, and thank you for participating. So thank you, Jason, Celine, and Nina.
Yes. Yeah, they were all drafted last moment. Matt McKinney was going to do this, and I guess now's as good a time as any to mention Matt organized this conference with myself and Daryl, and Matt's not here because Matt's at his mom's funeral this week. Some of you who were here last year will know that Matt wasn't here because he was at his dad's funeral last year. So, Matt, I'm thinking about you, and puts some things in perspective, doesn't it? Okay, moving forward. Some people are asking about whether this event is recorded and will it be available. It is being recorded and it will be made available. How quickly that happens is something it's out of my control, so I don't want to tell you exactly. If I get a better estimate, I'll let you know. But you'll get an email saying, hey, it's on the website, and so it will be there at some point. All right. Hey, look at that. I think we're on schedule. Wow. I don't know what to do. This hasn't happened before. Wow. It's early. I'm getting a little cocky now. Okay. Our next speaker is Roberto Salmon, who has been a leading figure in Mexican water management for several decades. Most importantly, at least for the context of our discussion, he was the Mexican commissioner to the International Boundary and Water Commission from 2009 to 2020. And that was a really active and really cooperative period of cooperation between the two countries. I believe there were 11 minutes signed in that period. Some of the big ones, those of us who are Colorado River nerds know some of the big ones: 318, 319, 323, all those things. And I knew he was well liked. I was reminded of that when I saw the hug that Becky gave him when he walked in the room. And I know he had a tough travel getting here. So we are very appreciative that he's come here. We've asked him to reflect on that experience that he had at the IBWC and how it is, or perhaps how it should be, influencing the next steps in the U.S.-Mexico relationship. So, Roberto. Oh, there he is.
Good morning. Thank you, Doug. And I want to thank Daryl and Matt for inviting me. And I want to take this opportunity to send my condolences to Matt on his mother's passing, well, his father also. I'm really glad, happy to be here, not in a commissioner's capacity. Maybe I can speak freely now. I'm not speaking on behalf of my country, and that takes a big load, big burden from my shoulders. Some of you who have been diplomats in the past have probably know about this good feeling, okay? So I would like to spend the next few minutes talking about a relationship that both our countries have built for the past 17 years, and I hope this relationship will continue for many, many more years, because I think it has been a successful and fruitful relationship. But before I begin that, I will like to talk, and this is for the benefit of those that they may not know. I would like to say a few words about the minutes, because I still see after 17 years that there are a lot of people that don't know what a minute is. So I'm going to give you a IBWC minute 101 crash course, or in a nutshell course of what the IBWC minutes are. Minutes are documents with resolutions based on technical and scientific elements which are aimed at solving a shared problem between our two countries, interpreting a treaty, and there are a few treaties that the IBWC, and when I say the IBWC, I'm not referring to the US section of the IBWC, I'm referring to the Commission as one entity, okay, which is formed by two sections, the Mexican section and the US section. So the Commission itself has the capacity to interpret many treaties, including the 1944 Water Treaty, which I will talk about in a few minutes. Minutes serve also to construct infrastructure. They say who's paying what, how the costs are going to be shared, what engineers are going to intervene in where, if they're going to be U.S. engineers or Mexican engineers, etc. So minutes detail all those things. And also they, among other things, they establish guidelines, procedures, and regulations. And these minutes signed by the IBWC commissioners and the secretaries become legally binding for both countries once they are approved by the US and the Mexican government. So these are very powerful documents that they are not to be used lightly, and they are used to be when there is a real need to have a minute. Otherwise, we can have these principal engineers' reports or joint reports that serve the purpose of solving a problem that doesn't need a specific minute, okay? So the capacity, where does this capacity of the Commission comes from? Well, originally it comes from the 1889 Convention, okay? This is the convention that created the International Boundary Commission. It didn't have anything to do with water. The problems were with where the boundary was going to be after the treaties were signed, okay? So later on in 1944, when the Water Treaty was signed, they included the word water, so it's International Water and Boundary Commission, okay? So it comes from there. And I will return to this subject of the minutes also in a short while. But still, before I do that, I would like to underline that the IBWC, again, is the only entity authorized to interpret the 1944 Water Treaty, as mentioned. These interpretations usually take the form of minutes. And you can see that probably not hidden, but within any minute, there is usually a small interpretation of the treaty. For example, the minute 318, where we were storing water in Lake Mead, Mexico was storing water in Lake Mead, there was not a way that Mexico could do that. Okay, so the minute interpreted the treaty so that Mexico could save water in Lake Mead, which later proved to be pretty beneficial for both countries, okay? So it is the only entity that can do that, because later I have seen a lot of people, a lot of other entities trying to interpret the treaty and saying we should do this, we should do that. And I urge you to go back and read the treaty, study the treaty, and then you will see what can be done and what cannot be done with this treaty, okay? Now, as for the relation between Mexico and the US in general terms, and I'm sure most of you will agree with me, at times this relationship has been indifferent, stormy, rough, bumpy, hostile, belligerent, and I have a whole list of describing words, okay? But I'm going to stop there. I don't want to bore you. But I'm sure you also will agree that there have been periods where it has been institutional, cordial, polite. So I will say it is a relationship that is spiced with periods of conflict, okay? So it's been like this since the signing of the 1848 peace treaty, which ended the war between Mexico and the US. First, there were problems, water problems, in the Rio Bravo, and later in the Colorado River. So it took almost a century, a little bit more than 90 years, to negotiate the 1944 water treaty. And that is, if we consider that we had some experience, okay, negotiating the 1908 Convention, which is a lesser-known water distribution treaty that not very many people know about, except perhaps in part of Texas and New Mexico. So a recent spicy period of conflict, and I'm saying spicy with quotes, okay? A recent spicy period of conflict between Mexico and the US was the controversy regarding the lining of the All-American Canal and the litigation that followed for a few years after that. So this was kind of rough for both countries, at least in the part of the Baja California and California region. But once this disagreement was resolved in 2007, both governments agreed to discuss cooperative actions related to the Colorado River. Thus, we have begun what I consider is a new era in the relationship between Mexico and the US, at least on matters concerning the Colorado River. And I'm glad I'm here talking about the Colorado River and not the Rio Bravo or Rio Grande. And you know what I mean. Let's keep it there. That year, 2007, our governments entrusted the International Boundary and Water Commission, the IBWC as a whole, with organizing binational dialogues to discuss issues related to water needs for both nations, including the study of the hydrological system, climate change and drought. Now, this is 2007. Water conservation and supply, environmental priorities, and opportunities for more efficient water deliveries to Mexico. This dialogue began with a meeting in Las Vegas on the last day of January 2008. 2 years later, we began to see the results of this cooperation process. 3 minutes were signed in 2010, minutes 316, 317, and 318. Now, the sequence of the signing of these minutes is very interesting, I think, because we were working on minutes 316 and 317 at the same time. And working on a minute by itself is a lot of work. And then working on 2 minutes at the same time is much more and very burdensome. Just let you know, Minute 316 arranged for the conveyance of water to the Santa Clara wetland during the pilot run of the Yuma desalting plant, which is, by the way, the first time that two governments and a group of environmental NGOs came together to supply water for ecological purposes. So this was quite an achievement. Minute 317, on the other hand, was a framework minute that established how businesses should be conducted in this cooperation process. However, 12 days before signing Minute 316, an earthquake destroyed part of the irrigation infrastructure in Mexicali. Because of that earthquake, Mexico needed to store the water that could not be used because of the lack of conveyance infrastructure. The Mexican section of the IBWC had to negotiate an agreement to hold the deliveries of Mexican water and keep this volume in Lake Mead, what I was talking about a few minutes before, until Mexico could decide what to do with this water. These negotiations led to Minute 318 of December 2010. At that time, we were working on a comprehensive minute, which later came to be 2019. But we only had to take the part of storing water, Mexican water in the US, and put that in Minute 318. Almost 2 years later, on November 2019, Minute 319 came to be, followed by Minute 323 in 2017, and Minute 330 this year. I'm not going to go into the details of this minute. I think a lot has been written and said and discussed about this minute. So I'm just going to say that minutes are like building blocks. You can build on top of the other. It's like Legos, I guess. It's just whatever you do in 1 minute, you can use that for the next minute, and then build those blocks, and you can have a foundation, and you can build better understanding between our two countries. Now, and I have said this many times before at conference, and I said at a conference in Santa Fe in 2019, that I firmly believe that it is important to have every now and then this recollection of events, no matter how brief it is, like in this case, so that we don't forget that accomplishing this partnership has not been easy, was not easy. It is important also to keep reminding ourselves of when and how things happen, so that we and those who will come after us will learn from our failures and capitalize on our successes. It is important also because these events are part of the story we have constructed together, the US and Mexico. A story which includes many persons that are here in this room today. I said at the beginning that we are in the 17th year of this Mexico-US partnership. So what's next? There was a miscalculation of the state of the system when the Colorado River Compact was established in 1922. We miscalculated the state of the system when we signed Minute 319. So we had to come up with Minute 323 and the binational drought contingency plan and the DCPs for each state. We miscalculated the state of the system in Minute 323. So we had to compensate with Minute 330. Is this the way we are going to keep doing things? Is this going to go ad infinitum or until we run out of water? Is this logical? Does it make sense? And I'm sorry to say, I don't have the answer to these questions. And I'm glad to hear that Commissioner Touton was mentioning that they're working on other alternatives to this situation we're living. Thank you, Commissioner, for that. But I know, however, that we need to keep our relationship going. I believe it is an essential component of the success of both the process and the Mexico-US partnership we have established. I know that we need to invest more in research and in creating science. I think we seem to forget that. And speaking for Mexico, I know we will need to devise a better decision-making process, one that gives voice to those who were left out, those that were left behind when we were working on previous minutes. Because water matters to everyone, not just the farmers, not just the industrialists, not just the city. I mean, the accountant, the lawyer, the hairdresser, I mean, those people, water matters to them. They're going to be out of business if we don't have water. So we have to include them. We need to hear their voices, but we need to devise a way to collect their thoughts. People need to be kept informed of the conditions of the system. And I know they are not. The lay people, they don't know what's happening, and they don't know what's going to hit them soon. And finally, I know that Mexico cannot and will not go beyond the 1944 Water Treaty. So we need to keep that in mind. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So out of respect, I'm just going to refer to you as Commissioner Salmon, even though I know you're the former one. You know. So I'm Jason Robinson. I'm a law professor up at University of Wyoming, and I have the privilege of facilitating this part of the dialogue with Commissioner Salmon. I'll start off the same way that Celine did. Please use Slido. We have the opportunity to talk with a former commissioner who, by his own admission, is willing to tell you where all the bodies are buried, right? I mean, he is ready to go off the chain in responding.
I knew I shouldn't have said that.
No, in all seriousness, what an amazing opportunity.
But I was also a diplomat, so I know how to dodge those questions.
So this is a special time and space. Please use Slido to pose questions that arise as far as your interest in U.S.-Mexico relations over the Colorado River. We've had a few come in so far. One definitely draws on current events. I don't know if there's a Colorado River connection, but I think the question's a really, really compelling and timely one. So Mexico City, it's the largest city in North America, you know, bigger than Los Angeles, bigger than New York, you know. What responsibility does the U.S. have to Mexico as its downstream neighbor, given the water crisis going on in Mexico and Mexico City? If not a legal responsibility, a moral responsibility. Do you see any connection of that sort?
No, not at all. I mean, what happens in Mexico City is about 3,000 kilometers from the border, so they have their problems, and I'm sure that they're looking at how to solve them. I don't see what relationship that has with the Colorado River water.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if I misunderstood the question.
You and me both. We're trying, right? In this life, we
Okay.
try. I'll ask another current events question, exercising a facilitator prerogative. Mexico recently elected its first female president in the history of the republic. It's a big deal, and yeah. And not only is the new president a woman, she's also a climate scientist, as I understand it. Do you have any thoughts on how her administration might approach Colorado River management going forward? Do you see any possibility her background might factor into Mexico's positions or whatnot regarding Colorado River management?
Well, she's always thought about the continuity of the previous administration. And the previous administration had, what should I say? I'm going to use my diplomatic immunity to say that they were not very much interested in environmental problems or issues or whatever. So I don't know. Well, and this lady, Dr. Sheinbaum, when she was the mayor of Mexico City, she was not also interested in environmental problems. So if we can use the past to forecast the future, well, I'll leave it at that. I hope I'm wrong, but for the good of the environment.
Thank you for your candor, as always. The next question connects to something broached fairly extensively by Commissioner Touton, which is Native peoples, or I'll say indigenous peoples, right? And the question posed is, do you feel that Mexico and or the IBWC have a role in Native American water settlements that involve a transboundary aquifer or groups of indigenous people that live on both sides of the border, both Mexico and the United States?
Yes, I do feel that the Mexican government has an obligation to include them, and I was mostly referring to them when I said at the end of my remarks. Okay, so we need to include them. I don't know why, because I don't know how, I'm sorry. Because we have this, our water law is very different than the water law in the US. So they will have they will need to have water rights first, and I'm not sure if they do have water rights at this moment. Mm-hmm. So we need to provide them with water rights so that they can be included. Okay.
A follow-up question there. You talked a lot about the progression of minutes. Have indigenous peoples been engaged in the process of formulating those minutes to any extent, informally or formally or whatnot?
No, they have not. They have not. That's why I say we left a lot of people behind. We didn't hear a lot of people also in the development of this and negotiation of these minutes. So that's something that needs to be changed. Okay.
Thank you. The next question shifts back to a subject you talked about quite a bit, which is climate change and shortage sharing. And I know the minutes don't use the words international water banking, but the use of U.S. infrastructure for storage of Mexican treaty water, right? So water allocation and climate change. And the question is very blunt, so don't kill the messenger, but here it is. How much of a potential 3 million acre-feet shortage in the basin would Mexico be willing to take if that's what the system requires?
I don't know exactly. Well, I couldn't talk about a percentage of that amount, but I'm sure that Mexico is doing things to collaborate, to participate on that. Okay. I cannot talk about the exact numbers or how much they are. Okay, but I know they have engaged that. In fact, Minute 330 is part of that engagement.
Okay, thank you. The next two questions focus on the portion of the basin within Mexico, the Delta portion, and I'm consolidating them. One of the questions just concerns the water stress experienced by Mexico in regards to its reliance on Colorado River water. I know some of that water goes to Delta agriculture, but then some also goes to the coastal cities, right? But yeah, the question is, could you talk a little bit about the water stress in Mexico surrounding the Colorado River, number one, and connected to that, could you talk a bit about efforts at water conservation, either in the agricultural sector and or in the industrial or municipal sector within Mexico?
Well, the water stress, we are beginning to feel the water stress at the Mexicali Valley. And it's going to get worse, of course. And yes, Mexico is doing a lot of investment and in part help by the U.S. with Minutes 319, 323, and 330 in order to conserve water. There's also a recent study being finished by the Lucan Center that has been handed to the state of Baja California. and where we consider other alternatives, including reuse of water and the desalting water in Rosarito and other parts. Okay.
The next question connects to a topic that I think was like a third rail for you and you wanted to avoid maybe in your remarks. So of course, people in the audience are going to ask a question based on it, right? The Rio Bravo, right? The Rio Grande. Could you talk a little bit about I guess, I want to say this in the right way, the non-delivery of Rio Grande water to Texas and the relevance, if any, of that to U.S.-Mexico relations over the Colorado River?
Yeah, the way the treaty is written, this is and I'm not going to use this term derogatory. This is one of the spices that come every 5 years. And when I was a commissioner for 11 years, and I tried to correct or do something that this thing wouldn't be happening every 5 years. I mean, it's like almost like a comet. I mean, every now it comes back. I mean, and so we need to do something about that. And I'm sure we will be doing something. It is an irritant. It becomes pretty heavy sometimes for both countries, not just for Mexico. Mm-hmm. And also, I underline, read the treaty. Mexico is not at fault right now, okay, in spite of what everyone says. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for being willing to touch on that subject. I can imagine it's not entirely easy.
I knew it would come.
Yeah. The next two questions, again, I'm going to consolidate them. I think they draw on your background as an engineer. They're about science, right? And specifically, what are your thoughts about the importance of science in navigating Colorado River management issues going forward, and specific areas of scientific research or scientific development that are the most promising, most salient going forward? And the one area that's mentioned, but feel free to take it in whatever direction you want, is desalination, and the prospect of a desalination facility being sited in the Gulf of California there to support, I guess, water use by both agricultural and municipal stakeholders.
Well, I think science is very important. I'm a scientist, so I think we lack enough science in order to base our decisions. We have science. I've worked with very remarkable scientists, both in the US and in Mexico, trying to come up with these models and trying to base our decisions on good science with the data that we have available. But I think that we need more. We need more of that. We need more knowledge of what this climate change is doing to us, is doing to our crops, is doing to our, you know, when I came across this with the Urals and the article that they came up with, saying that the problem with the Colorado River was sublimation. I said, wow, yeah, that's it. I mean, we couldn't in Mexico, and we had a lot of people at the University of Mexico City trying to understand what was happening. And sometimes they will think that they were, in the US, they were doing the wrongful use of water. It wasn't that. I mean, simply water wasn't going from snow to the lakes. And that was a really breakthrough for us. I mean, like a really awakening moment, you will say. And since then, I have been following all the articles that come out and try to understand what is happening. And that's why I say we need more science. And if we go to the salting plants, we're in the same situation. I mean, what is the current leading technology? Membranes. I mean, that's been going on for what, 50, 60, 70 years or something like that. I mean, there's nothing new. I think there has been more advance in how to dispose of the brine than how to desalt the water. So yeah, we need more science there also.
Appreciate that. The next question shifts back to governmental affairs or governmental relations. You talk quite a bit about relationship building between the United States and Mexico in conjunction with the minutes, right? During this spicy period that you mentioned, yeah, that was great.
Not during, after the spicy period.
Oh, after the spicy period, yeah, okay.
That's different.
Okay, so the question is, this is an analogy question, right? The question is, so with this relationship building between the United States and Mexico that's been going on in conjunction with the minutes, do you see lessons that can be learned from that for the efforts that Commissioner Touton mentioned a moment ago at relationship building between the federal government and tribal nations in the United States? Do you see similarities or differences in the relationship building in the context of U.S.-Mexico relations? To what extent do you see that effort relevant to federal tribal relations in the United States? Take it whichever direction you wish.
Well, I think that the relationship, I wish you would have seen the first meeting I attended when this whole thing started. I mean, the stare at the faces, what are we doing here? I mean, Mexico was there just saying, hey, just give me my water, like Texas right now, okay? And the U.S., what are we doing here? I mean, we don't have anything to talk with them. I mean, it's just give them the water and everyone to their own businesses. But see how many things we did. I mean, it's amazing. I don't think any other area of the U.S.-Mexico relationship has had this success, this kind of success. So we cannot lose that. We need to keep doing this. We need to keep talking. Sometimes you say, this is useless. I mean, we're not getting anywhere. But it doesn't matter. Keep talking, keep talking, keep talking. And also the personal relationship that you can have with your counterpart is also important. I remember when Commissioner Drusina and I were to Jordan, and we met with the commissioners of Jordan, Israel, and Palestine. Those guys meet every 5 years. I mean, when are they going to get together and solve their problems? They don't even know how many kids the counterpart had, or if they have grandchildren or not. So that leads nowhere. Okay.
Thank you. Persistence and intentionality. Yeah. The following question circles back to Mexico's portion of the basin or adjacent the coastal areas too. I don't know if you want to say any more on this, but I think it might be eye-opening for folks in the audience. Could you talk a little bit more about issues that the United States needs to be aware of involving water management in the Mexicali Valley, in the ag sector, and water management in Tijuana in the municipal sector?
Well, I think that the negotiating teams should be aware of all the issues, and if they are not, they need to do their homework.
Yeah.
And like Forrest Gump, that's all I have to say about that.
Okay, I think we probably have time. We're looking at 5 minutes about. Don't go over. All right. I will follow in the footsteps of my predecessor, Celine, and keep us on track. I'll do my best. So I'll try to put two questions in. One circles back to the Rio Bravo, or Rio Grande, and then the other one will be kind of big picture on the Colorado. The first question, so again, say what you will in response to this question, but there's a proposed settlement going on between Mexico, or New Mexico, pardon me, and Texas right now concerning the Rio Grande Compact and Elephant Butte Reservoir. Do you have thoughts on what Mexico's position should be regarding this proposed settlement between the two states?
I don't think, well, I learned first the litigation that was between New Mexico and Texas. And then they reached an agreement, and now the federal government is also intervening, and now New Mexico and Texas are litigating against the U.S. government. Am I right? Okay.
That captures it. We have some experts, but I think that's the gist. The
And
headwaters-
Colorado? Okay. So I don't have anything to say about it.
Don't want to step into the hornet's nest, huh? Okay.
Well, I'm a guest here, so.
You are a guest, and we're honored to have you. I'll conclude then with the big picture question I alluded to a minute ago. Could you talk, as a person who's been on the inside of the international diplomacy, could you talk about how the decision-making process between the United States and Mexico over the Colorado River changes with each new administration change at the federal level?
It shouldn't change. The process should be the same. What can change is the optics of each commissioner. Because if a commissioner says that this is not a problem to their country, they may not engage in discussing and trying to solve what may be a problem to the other country. But if they have a similar situation elsewhere, they can accommodate and say, okay, we'll solve your problem here and you solve my problem here. That's negotiation, that's diplomacy, that's the way things are done. Okay.
Okay. The trains are running on time. Sincere thanks for putting content in the slide out. And thanks for coming.